well, one of the reasons I love Get Down is, to me, I just, I don't know, it makes me want to, well, it all makes me want to dance, but I really feel like there's another, it's the whole record, but dance floor. I mean, it's going to happen. It's happening already, I think, in New York. And
it is. And this whole kind of, it's so strange to me that I always felt like I was just such an outsider in the kind of music I was making, because I never was following a trend or caring about any of that shit.
Right.
Like, it was like, here's the song, here's the remix for the club, because of, our friends, Alex Lauderstein, just DJing all over the place. And it's like, you have to have stuff to give to the DJs. Totally. It's fun to be out dancing and hear your song come on. It's great. But I hadn't realized that there were so many artists who were putting out this kind of like 80s influenced, very retro sounding music that's brand new. And so that's been very interesting to discover.
Isn't that a good thing? I feel like people are so into it and open to it right now.
Oh, I think it's a great thing. I just didn't know that it was happening, because I, for 5 years, have been wrapped up in just this album specifically, and the whole angry political thing that was happening for so long. There were so many distractions and things that got in the way. But
oh my
Get Down, it's funny that you mentioned that song specifically. Get Down is it's kind of funny to me, because that's literally, I'm always like running late when it comes to meeting up.
It is funny. There's so many funny things in it. Be mad.
And then it's also like that deep Get Down thing. That for me was a reference to the Black Box from like the 90s, and that's how that song actually starts, I believe, as well. It's super cool, so you need to hear that song. What'd you say?
I said I never had the cassette tape. I only had.
You should definitely listen to that song. That one in particular is just like, there's a reference in there. And then at the same time, there's references to the drum parts of, I think it's called Rock Steady or Steady Rock by the Whispers from the 80s. And it's just very specific drum beats. And then also like the verses, I was thinking about like old school Janet Jackson songs where it was like really nice and flowy and just kind of soft, unlike the dog barking. And it was just like, that was where my head was at. It was very 80s, 90s.
Yeah. It actually, now that you mentioned it, the structure of it is sort of, I mean, possibly it is like verse, chorus, verse or something, but somehow it flows a little bit less. It's less obvious to me. It's a real journey to me, that song. Like, I couldn't tell you, right? Usually I can tell you, oh yeah, it goes verse, chorus, verse, bridge, the same old, but it doesn't feel like that. It feels like you're diving in and out of these little moments where it's, where a vignette of like what's going on, like perhaps you're running late and like, yeah. And
it is. That's an interesting track, and there were so many iterations of it too.
Oh yeah,
before it got to that. Yeah. Like the lyrics were the same, but like even just the deep Get Down thing, I recorded that literally while I was working on something else, and there were people around. I went into a closet and recorded those two words into my iPhone, and then just sent it to myself and dumped it in there and tweaked it and made it happen. But because I kept hearing that in my mind, so I needed it to be in there.
It needs to be in there. It has to be in there. Absolutely. So if you were to do some like remixes, would you do them? Would you work with somebody else or other?
I like to do this kind of stuff. I love to remix, but I have to tell you, I would love for other people to remix these songs. I can't tell you I'm in touch with what's happening on the dance floors anymore.
Okay.
I don't really go out that much. And if I am going to go out,
where you release it, you will let somebody else.
Yeah. Like instead of collaborating on the original version, it's always interesting to be like, here, take the vocals and any element that you might want and do your thing with it. Interpret it how you want to.
Well, I hope you do. I
want to
get my hands on those.
There is also, just on that note too, as far as remixes go, like the song Thunderclap Back.
Oh yes.
There are all these like kind of calls in it, and it's very referencing like ballroom scene and ball culture.
Big time. I was going to say that whole like.
That's what it's about. Yeah. And so I would love for like, DJs who make music for and spin, in ball culture. Like I would love to hear their version.
Fantastic. Yes.
Because that's what it'll sound like. Whoa, 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 whoa. In the background.
Yeah. That has somebody could really do some damage with that one for real.
I think so too.
Yeah, pretty much all of them. But that was one that stands out as well. That was ballsy, I feel like.
Was it?
Yeah. I mean, in the greatest way. I don't mean like, how very dare you? I mean, like, it's just, really hard references that New York voguing culture, ball culture.
Well, look at how much it's kind of, if something, it's like a collective consciousness, right? If it's in your mind somewhere, it's in someone else's mind elsewhere in the world.
Yeah.
And so, because you were with me in New York, and we were watching Legendary, which is so great, watching that, and Pose, and all of these shows where it's like, okay, they're going to start to tell these stories. And we were out and about in New York City, you and I, in club culture during those times, and into balls, and it's amazing. And I never actually thought that anyone would see the inner workings of that part of culture, other than Paris is Burning or Madonna's Vogue song. I thought like that would be the beginning and end of it, and how
nothing. I mean, that isn't that wild? Such a huge thing, and it almost went that way. It almost went down like that. That's it.
Yeah, it was like.
And now they interview these kids on that other documentary you're watching, and they don't know what Paris is Burning is. I'm like,
isn't that crazy? Yeah, it's mind blowing.
But they know all the lingo.
Yeah,
somehow it's incredible, right?
Yeah. Well, also how the lingo has crept into mainstream culture.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Suburban moms.
Suburban moms running around and being like, work this thing, yes, queen, and all this stuff. And you and I know some of that shit has been appropriated from other areas too. It's just, it finds its way.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So are you going to sit with this for a while, or what happens next? You're not going to take 5 years, are you?
No, I'm not going to wait 5 years. I definitely
you probably have stuff you're working on already.
Well, I actually recorded so many more songs for this album. Oh. There are a whole bunch that did not make it onto this album. And those songs, a lot of them were starting to get political. Like there's a song that was just like hardcore. I mean, it's basically like a rap song, like which I've never done before. I never thought I'd do, but a song that's super anti-Orange Monster Trump. And so I was like, not bringing that into the album. And and then there's another song that's it's called White Room. And that song is about just hating social media so much and how it's making you crazy and how people behave so terribly. And it's like, that song is totally a straight up club track, bitch track, with just like random musings about how annoying the world is.
The world needs this. You need to go back and do something with that. We need a bitch track about social media desperately.
It's coming. It's coming. It'll be like, I'll probably just put out like some little mini EP like called The Rant or something,
Love it.
It'll be there.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. Time is right for that too. I feel like a lot of people are feeling the same way. So
yeah. And I mean, I'm never going to just stop working, but now I want to find a dedicated space to just go and work on music, because I'm always kind of working around some other thing that's happening. I'm working with a little barking dog in the corner.
Right.
Or, making my husband hide in the corner, which he's doing right now. It's hard, but
it's something that people don't realize, that, you don't just get to go into some quiet room for 8 hours or 10 hours or whatever every day, whenever you want. Like, you have to fit this into a whole life too. So it makes it even more incredible.
Well, it's every free moment that you have. It's like you have to kind of savor it and just run in and make it happen. But thankfully, technology's changed so much that I can make music in a bathroom or in a closet or wherever. I was even making music going back and forth from when I was living in LA and working in New York and going back and forth. I was making music on the plane. Like that. I would set up like, here's my computer, here's my laptop, here's a miniature, tiny little controller keyboard this big. If I needed to like write a bass line or some chord progressions. And then my big headphones, and at that point, a cocktail and some sunglasses and a hood, because it just was like, I was over it, didn't want to talk to anyone. That was the only time I had to work, other than when I was at home in LA. But you could do it anywhere now.
Right. So you must, because of that, you're thinking about it all the time. I mean, you're always thinking about it, like somewhere in the back, like.
Yeah. As I get older, though, the part that I think about the most is how much you can do technically. Like I love, and I'm sure I know that you can tell that this comes through on this album, but I love the technical aspect of writing and recording music. And in the past, it's like it was
big time.
It was like a challenge for me to try and figure out how to do things. But I think for this album, it was like, I want to really learn more. And the weirdest thing is I had taken so much time away from music because I was, going through everything I went through with my father, having cancer and passing and taking care of him.
Right.
So like I was so detached from making music for so long that when I sat down, I'm like, okay, I'm going to work and I'm going to finish this. I completely forgot how to use Logic Pro. I had to relearn so much. Like I was like on a roll with when I was doing Intimate Science and the first 3 songs that I did. I could have done it with my eyes closed. And then it felt like I had to relearn everything. So what I did is I sat down and I watched tutorials. I spent a lot of money buying these sounds and plugins and, processors for everything, effects, because I just wanted it to be really, really sleek and really tight. So it means a lot to me that someone with such a very well-tuned ear, such as yourself, can hear that I put such an effort into it, because I do.
You can hear, there's a lot. I mean, I can hear you playing. Mm-hmm. When I say that, I mean playing around. I can hear I can hear you having fun doing it. I can hear you going like, oh, I just figured out how to do this, and it's all those expansive things that just make stuff sound really big. And it's probably like the mix down process or even mastering and stuff. I don't know. It sounds the sound. I like the actual sound of it.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Not just the songs and the the beats and everything, but the actual sound is just right to me. It's not, sometimes it's overdone with like crazy reverb and whatever. It has this kind of glossy, wet lusciousness to it, but it's not like dripping in that, just chucks them at it to try and sort of fill it out. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah.
Well, I feel like in this project, it was about the details and little tricks here and there and little, ways to emphasize something or de-emphasize something or push something really wide. Like I wanted all the backing vocals to be really wide.
They're so wide.
Separate people.
Yeah.
That's so all my other personalities were singing along.
Little things, little details that pop out. You're like, oh, I love that little thing in the background. Or there's a few changes that are really, really great. And I'm like, oh, no, you didn't. Okay. Love it. Yeah, I really love it.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I feel like there's some really great just musicality on it. Like there's some of these bass lines that I feel like, some of these bass lines.
We can do that.
We're allowed to do that. Really, really good. Like holding it down. And that's, I think, a place where a lot of this kind of thing can fail with some artists because they have great ideas, but you really do have to know what you're doing with that stuff. Yeah. It's possible to just hit the same 3 notes in a certain pattern and there's a bass line and that'll do. It'll hold the song up, but it's a completely different thing when it's like, which is, I think, the bass line and Get Down. Again, I keep going to that song, but it's excellent.
Thank you. That was, I was walking around like, with my mask on and maybe it's some weird futuristic visor at that point during lockdown. And that song, I just was like humming the bass line to it. And so I like ran over the side of the road and I kind of like sang the bass line into the phone so that I would remember the melody of it. And then I was like, I have to just get that done.
I'm glad you did. Great.
That one and Push Up the Fader, both of them, like there were just like quick things like, oh, this is an idea and I'm just going to.
That's so weird because
an audio note.
Right.
or a voice memo.
All that to come from it is really incredible, because if it does not feel like again, like that's that song and Escapist Behavior too, feel like they are a little journey on their own. So what was the song you mentioned at the beginning?
Oh, Touch.
Touch, right. Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do next.
And I was having such a conflict internally, because it was like, so there's a song called Touch, and then a song called Magic Touch. And I was like, the idea of having two songs with similar titles on the same album, that was making me crazy too. But they couldn't go one after the other.
Yeah.
At all.
No, I didn't even notice that.
Oh, good.
Actually. So
a lot of touching going on.
Yeah. Well, SIRPAUL, what do you expect?
I know.
In one song where you're talking about, like, there's so many hands on me.
Oh, that's Magic Touch.
That's Magic Touch. Made me laugh, because I'm like, yeah, like that's every video. Not every video, but I can think of like, and you didn't like it.
No, and it's such a funny thing, because
I know it's not meant that way, but
but it is kind of, because that sounds to me, that sounds really abstract, but it was so much about just how, if you're going to go out into public as a gay man with another man, it's like, you have to just be balls out and say, fuck it. And it has to be in your mind so normalized. You can't have all that built up, internalized homophobia,
right?
For yourself and everything. That can't really be a part of anything, because it doesn't, otherwise you're out there doing something that feels shameful, and it's not. So there was that element to it. And then there's also all of these other elements of, performing anywhere and getting off stage and all these people touching you and stuff. It's weird. There's that person is thinking that they've got the magic touch. They don't.
And
they're actually not having consent, and they're violating.
Okay.
So it's like,
what about Some Kind of Way? I love that too. That little, it's like a guitar-y sound. It almost sounds like some.
That's like a sitar kind of vibe.
It is a sitar. Yes, thank you. That's a great track as well. Tell me about it.
I wanted to have a little bit of a reference to some of the stuff I did a long time ago. So that sound is definitely like some of the sounds on my Dismantle album, which is all like kind of acoustic and stuff. But then it also has, it kind of has a jungle drum and bass element to it. So it's like half time for the whole song, and then the build up of it is like double time.
Yeah.
Because I'm a raver still. And so, but also the vibe of it, I wanted the vibe of it to be something like you play in your car in the summer, and know, and then that whole you could get what you want. That whole thing was sound that I found. It was like some sample of like a record skipping. It was like and I was like, oh, and then I just kind of that's where that went.
Yeah, that's where your mind went. It's great. Yeah. It's fun to get along to. And Find the Light is another one that I really like.
Well, that one, remember, I sent that to you, the demo of it.
Yes.
First, and I was like, what do you think of this? Because you had introduced me when we were living together, and you had introduced me to like so much amazing music that I had never heard, that I should have heard, before. But there were like elements of like in my mind when I was working on it, there were like, I was thinking about Ministry, Work for Love, and just like just parts of it. You know what I mean? Like, especially the way that the vocal is delivered, to me, it's referencing that. But then the rest of it, I mean, that song, like just all the backing vocals on that song are so extensive and out there and percussive, and it was like a big experiment. But that song is about my dad, so it's kind of a dark song that I wanted to sound really happy because I didn't want any depressing songs on this album. But that song is very much like, oof, trust me. Can I go with you? Because I hate the world right now. Not in a suicidal way, but
that's who you were, talking to or about when there, but it just doesn't come across in a sad way.
Well, because things like that are not always 100% sad. I mean, if the person's suffering and they are able to be set free from that, then you have to do your best to celebrate their life. after that and just kind of think about the good stuff. And I don't know, my father's energy is around me all the time. So
yeah. And he was a fun guy. He would want you.
Yeah. He would have danced around a lot to these songs. It would have been very
definitely. Absolutely. As soon as I put it on, I was like, oh my God, I wish we'd have a listening party together, because I want to, which, you know, I want to do. I mean, I wish we could be in the same room, but it's like, you know, because as you listen, you're like, oh my God, I wonder if that's what this is about, or how did he do that? Or when did you write this? You know, just so many things pop out to me about in each song, whether it's a lyric or I just want to say, I love that. I love that bit. I love that part. You know.
See, and I want to know those things. Like I love when I'm getting like messages from people on random social media things or text messages or whatever, and people being like, oh my God, I love this part of this song, or I love this song. And the feedback that I'm getting is coming from all different places all over the world, because I do have friends that don't live there. And it's interesting to, like yourself, you're all the way over in Manchester. It's interesting to see which songs appeal to different people. And maybe it's a cultural thing, or maybe it's just somewhere in their subconscious from a reference back in the day when they were younger too. You know, you don't know why something goes to someone, but I love knowing, oh, you heard that. Because when you make music, really ultimately, I mean, I'm making it for myself because I'm making what I want to hear, but it's nice to acknowledge that you're being heard, you know?
Oh, yeah. And it's interesting to me to know, and whether something, you know, something that sounds like a real choice to me, if it was, or if it was just like, oh, that's just how it came out. Or if you were like, you know, because you do everything on your own. You're not bouncing anything off anyone, right? Like, do you ever have times where you're like,
I do have the conversation with myself. And I think that's why for this project, I was like, let me just record the song. And then I'm going to, instead of being like, it's just done, I want to record it. And I actually finally demoed songs and listened to them. And I would walk around all the time, because my only escape during that time was walking the dogs. So I'd walk around and listen to the songs over and over and over again. And if anything bothered my ear, I went back in. Those choices, definitely, I'm like, I can pick it out myself. But then I would say Paul, my husband, I just, you know, I bounce things off of him here and there. Yeah. Poor guy's got to listen to the shittiest version. And then finally we get to like the done last version. And he's like, oh, I like this. Or, you know, some songs he's like, cool, that's great. I don't expect him to like every single song, but I would say he's the person whose opinion I asked the most. I mean, I sent you Find the Light too, just because I was like, yeah, here's where I'm at. And I know
I recognize this. But he deserves some kudos too, then, I guess. Yeah. It's really good. Sure. But, you know, there must be times too where it's not just like, you know, picking out a sound that needs to be, you know, EQ'd or something, but like actual choices
like chord progressions or changes.
Sure. Totally.
Oh, yeah. I owe a lot of it to you, though, actually, because you, especially on the last album on Intimate Science, you really pointed out to me that you liked when a change would happen in the song that was somewhat unexpected. And it really resonated with me. That's
so weird, because also just, you know, voice everywhere too, where it's not, you know, it just, yeah, I'm really noticing it. And it's just fun. It's just fun to listen to. It's like ear candy. You know what I mean? It's like, you know,
it's supposed to be an escape. So hopefully it's just that.
Yeah, it is. You succeeded.
Thank you. Oh, thanks. Thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me too, because aside from it being long overdue, there are very few people that I think this would be even interesting to listen to a conversation about between myself and you. It just makes more sense.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's super fun, and yeah, anytime. I loved it. Loved it. Thank you. Sounds good. Sounds good. I'm going to go listen to this record now.
So find some other fun little bits that you like.
I'm going to point them out. I'm going to start texting you every time one hits and be like,
I love it. It's fun.
Okay, cool. Get ready.
All right. I'm ready, babe. I'm always ready. Love you.